some technical difficulties as I'm using my brand new camera, new microphone, all of those things. So excited to see you and to be finally set up here in my new office space in Colorado. So we are going to talk today about why people are leaving their jobs. And this last week, Susan and I talked a little bit about purpose and passion and the role that those play in our success. And those are so important. They're critical to us to be and successful. We looked at that. We looked at the data around that. We looked at what purpose and passion means. So if you missed that last week, go back and listen. It was a great conversation with Susan Critton about the role that purpose and passion play in our lives. So I want to talk about today how that does and doesn't line up with why people are quitting their jobs and some of the ways that we might coach people to help them feel more successful, maybe where they are, or to transition, but maybe transition faster to achieve the goals that they're looking for because of that transition, which passion and purpose will play a part, but that's not the whole story. And we'll talk about that here as we look at some of this data. So as you're joining us, please tell me hello. Let me know where you're joining from. We'd love to hear what you're seeing in terms of why people are leaving their jobs. And a few of you commented in things as we were getting ready for this event, and we'll share some of that as well. So let's look at some of the data. And the first article that I'm going to show is a data that actually is a data point that we came up with from a study a while ago, and I just want to show you how things have changed. LinkedIn is being tricky. There we go. Get that out of the way. Okay, here we go. Now we can share LinkedIn. Computer is going to cooperate. Okay, so this is a study that was done. So this is actually an article on my LinkedIn page that went through, who's leaving and why. So if you haven't read this, it goes through more of why people want career help and what they're looking for. But we're just going to look at this data that I had pulled from why people are leaving. And then this data was from 2021 at SETI. And so I'm going to copy this link. I'll drop it in the chat for you here in a second. This is from 2021, and you can see that low salary, limited career opportunities, not being valued by my manager, relationships with colleagues, inadequate pandemic health measures. So those things most important in 2021, poor benefits. And so you kind of get that these are the reasons that people were quitting. Now, we don't know exactly how they asked the question. Maybe these were the only options people had and they just had to choose one. Was it at, open answer? We don't know. So I just wanted to pull one, some more recent data, and two, kind of a slew of data so that we could see, is this a theme? Why are people leaving their jobs? What role does purpose or passion play in that? And what role might it not necessarily be playing, or playing a little bit of a backseat driver, not necessarily the front seat driver? So I wanted to also show you some other data. And I'm going to see if this will let me share my window so that I don't have to keep going back and forth, because that's annoying. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now you should be able to see the other study here from the Great Resignation. And this one is from Pew Research. Great way to look at data through they do very comprehensive research. And so this Pew Research Center study found that pay was too low, number one. Let me make this a little bigger. Yeah, okay. So pay was too low, no opportunities for advancement. So far, these are lining up pretty well with that SETI research from a year ago. Felt disrespected because of childcare issues. So one of our colleagues, Sarah Johnston, was just writing about this on LinkedIn. Women have really struggled with this, and men, of course, too, but we know this affects women more typically. Not enough flexibility, benefits, wanted to relocate, too many hours, too few hours. and then some down there of requiring the vaccine. So this is matching up pretty well with the other research that we saw, those first few reasons being very close to that other article. So thinking about now, who quits and why. This one was the boss or management, which is typically the number one reason that people have stated in the past that they leave. So that one came up here at the top, and this is from very recent, July 2022. Salary, better offer, which maybe salary may be related to something else, we don't know. Working conditions, workers' culture. So again, some alignment with those other graphics. No room for growth, bad for my health, burned out, retirement, which of course we know a lot more people are retiring, but then they are coming back and saying, what do I want to do now? I don't want to do nothing. I want to do something that maybe does align more with my passion or purpose. And what does that mean? Relocated, and we can kind of see all of that. So the job was not what I expected is down there. That might align a little bit with that purpose piece. And I think when I see the room for growth, that aligns with those purpose or passions. I want to feel like I'm growing. I want to feel like I'm evolving as a person, as a professional. So that piece can kind of align with that. And then this last one here is from McKinsey. And it's interesting. So this one has that meaningfulness of work up here in the factors driving retention and factors driving attrition. So people leave because of the compensation and advancement, but then theirs shows that kind of meaningfulness of work being high up there as well. And we didn't see that in the other studies, but it could be that they just didn't ask it in a way that connected with people, or perhaps didn't ask it, it wasn't an option at all. So when we think about why people leave, of course, that we want to feel useful. We want to feel like we're using our skills. We want to have that growth. And what I've found when I worked with people, I'd love to hear if you feel the same, is that oftentimes money isn't really about the money. Of course it is, but it's also about, do I feel valued? And the salary that someone might pay me, I either feel valued or not because of that salary, in addition to the working conditions. But someone telling me that they value me, or even listening to my opinion, and maybe even slightly even implementing my ideas, those can all make me feel like I'm meaningful and working with passion or purpose. But then if you're not paying me for that, sometimes it can even feel worse if you're implementing my ideas, and yet I feel like I'm not fairly compensated for that. And the data around salary and salary trends has been showing very clearly that people are more likely to increase their salary when they're making that move between companies than internally, which is really frustrating, since we also hear and we've talked about how oftentimes internal advancement can be easier. But if people aren't getting a salary bump with that, then they're not going to meet that goal of, one, feeling more valued, and two, getting the financial compensation that they're looking for with that internal move up. Now, I would say that there's probably a middle ground here when you're thinking about, it's not move out or move up, right? You've also got, in a larger company especially, perhaps the opportunity to move between departments, to make those moves and get maybe a little bit more of the salary bump benefits, in addition to the ease of staying within your organization. Of course, as we see a lot of bigger organizations struggling, that internal mobility may not be as great as it was even just a few months ago. And now we may be looking at helping people move companies more in order to make that salary bump. And what the research shows, especially that McKinsey research, let me grab the link from that and put it in the chat. Well, actually, let me put this in the chat first. So that's the first article from Zeti. Let me grab that McKinsey research, because it also talks about people making that move and how that can help them in terms of industry, how it can help them. But they're making moves in their industries, not just in their jobs. So 48%, that McKinsey research showed that 48% of people are changing their industry. And we know as career services providers that when people change their industry, they need help, right? Because they're going to have to translate what they've done out of their former industry lingo into the new industry lingo. And many people start to struggle there. They don't really know how to do that. So some of you may have just lost me. If you lost me and you're coming back, welcome back. It says I have a connection issues with one of my feeds. So the main point here is that people need help figuring out how to make that move. If they're moving industries, they need to figure out how to package who they are and what they've done in a way that will connect with that new industry. So how do I bring my expertise, my knowledge, my value from one industry to the next? And this is where a lot of people can struggle with that or try to kind of start over because I think that I need to fit into this new industry. If I do that, if I'd start over, then I can't take some of my value with me and I may end up not getting that salary bump I was hoping for because when I'm transitioning industry, I'm not able to position myself at the level that I want to be at. So we want to be able to help them do that. And of course, one of the ways that we help them do that is to really understand who they are, the value that they bring, and how to tell those stories outside of the industry language. They need to be able to tell their story in a way that translates from one industry to the next. So if I'm working with someone who's been in insurance sales, and we use this example, but insurance sales in some ways can be looked down on by sales professionals in other industries. And so if I make my person look like an insurance salesperson and they're trying to get into new industry, say something that's growing right now, like healthcare tech or something like that, if I make them sound like an insurance salesperson, they're not going to feel like a fit. So I'm really going to change that story, change the narrative to focus in on the sales wins and the sales leadership, the sales stories, and downplay the industry language so that they don't feel like an insurance salesperson. They just feel like a successful, hopefully, acclaimed, whatever acronym, whatever adjective, that's the right word, whatever adjective you want to use, so that they feel successful and not tied to that industry. And one of the tools that we've been talking a lot about in the last few weeks, because we have our class starting next week, is personal branding. And how can we help someone really understand who they are at the core and the value that they bring from their core so that they can tell those stories in a way that connects and doesn't require them to be stuck in a certain industry. And so I'm going to show you, I'm just going to bring up, for those of you that might be interested or curious, I'm bring up again our workbook for the personal branding program, and just would walk you through some of this of how we help people do that, how we help people really think about who they are. And then if you have any questions about the personal branding program, or if you're a graduate and you want to give us a shout out, I love that too. We've been working on this program a lot. Well, we're always working on all of our programs, but we've been working on this program a lot, really just to give people some concrete steps that they can take people through, because oftentimes this idea of who are you and what value do you bring is really overwhelming for people. They're struggling a little bit of how do they bring that to life and how do they share that in a way that is going to help them tell that story. So that's what we're here for. That's what we love to do. And we'll show a few of these pages to you. Now, some of these are, activities and things that we've created for our students that they can use with their clients. And these, like I said, this workbook that we share with our students. So let me just get it to be the right size before I share it with you so that you don't have to go through the whiplash of me changing the size on you. Okay, so if you've never looked at our personal branding process before, this is just a good process to help you walk through. And of course, it's out there, it's available in terms of the steps. So extracting, expressing, and exuding your brand. We talk about extracting because it's not about making something up, right? Branding is not about fabricating who you want to be. Branding is about extracting who you are and then recognizing the language and the way that you're messaging it that could connect to that target audience. And of course, we have to know who that target audience is before we can do that effectively. Then we're going to start telling those stories. We're going to start making those connections in the express phase. And, you've done this work, even if you haven't put this name to it, that people always want to jump to the resume. They want to jump to a LinkedIn profile. They want to jump there before really taking the time to understand who they are. The problem with that is that they usually either become a commodity and they're just using a bunch of keywords or buzzwords and not really telling who they are, or they're telling who they are and they're really getting deep into the story without really thinking about how it connects to their audience, because the audience is a big part of that extract phase as well, not just them. And then that exude is, how do you show up every day in person, online, in a way that is congruent with your brand, and continually building your brand image so that you don't have to be pushy or have to, be salesy, because you just come across as authentic. And the way that we do that here is our light bulb process, our branding process: interest, strengths, values, differentiators, purpose, goals. And we call it interests instead of passions. As Susan talked about last week, sometimes those words can be overwhelming or intimidating for people, and interest feels a little bit more safe, if you will. So when we get into those processes, we always start with, the values, the interests, what's important to people. We go through several different types of values because we know it isn't just about work values. It isn't just about personal values. So we've got intrinsic, content, environment, relationships, and meaning. How do I build meaning? Because getting some definition around what meaningful work is very powerful. So we go through those in our process, and little checklists here. Then we get into the phase where we're talking about people's interests. We've got a lot of values, a lot of questions there on values. Interests, fascinations, passions. We've got some coaching questions that people use to identify those and get into really what is it that brings them energy. What do they like to do? What do they do when they get up on the weekends, etc.? And strengths. We love the Strengths Finder, but we also give people some tools that they can use to identify those strengths in a little bit more conversational way. So as you're thinking about helping people in your space, in your world, I'd encourage you to think about how you go through these different types of areas with the values, interests, strengths, purpose, and then of course goals, which a lot of people don't think about. But your goals are, well, here's target audience. So target audience is a piece people often don't consider. And also thinking about their goals and how those factor into their brand, because your brand isn't just who you are right now, but it's also who are you becoming? What is that future of your brand? Because if you haven't thought about that, then again, you can't tell those stories as they relate to your future goals. If you're stuck in telling them in the past, they're really not going to help you move forward. So this is some of the fun that we've been doing. We've been having a good time with some of our workbooks and worksheets and giving those to our certified personal brand strategists. If you're curious, if you have questions about that, or if we can share anything else that we've got out there in the public sphere that would be helpful to you, please let me know. We'd be happy to do that. And we are always here on Tuesdays. So if you have a question or some kind of topic that you'd like for us to cover on Tuesdays, please let me know. We would be happy to answer your questions or cover topics that you're interested in. And we will see you all next Tuesday. Thank you, everyone.